You're listening to Permission to Shine, the podcast. Stories of overcoming obstacles and finding self-empowerment with Sherisse Bisram, Inner Power Activation Leader. The Oxford Dictionary describes permission as the action of officially allowing someone to do a particular thing, consent, authorization. What if you were that someone and you gave yourself the permission to be everything you wanted to be and more? No more playing small and accepting less than. You are worthy of the life of your dreams, regardless of what it is that you've been through. And honestly, it's exactly what you've been through that has shaped you into the version of yourself that you are now. Like a diamond, you've endured so much, but instead of breaking, you have become stronger and brighter. And if that's not a reason to shine, then I don't know what is. And if nature can do it, then why the hell can't you? You are brave, you are strong, you are powerful, and you are enough. Hear my call and give yourself the permission to shine, because you don't realise how many people are inspired by your light. Hi everyone, this is episode 26 and I'm so excited to welcome Jenny on. Now, it was such a really random encounter. I was on a call and it was full of powerful women, business women, and Jenny was like, I need a guest for my podcast this week. And everyone was like, Sherisse, and I was like, yes, me, take me, Jenny. And I was like, and then in exchange, I want you on my podcast. So here we are, Jenny. Thank you for coming.
It's great to be here, Sherisse. It's really lovely. We have just recorded my episode, so it's going to be great to get, it's almost like bookends, isn't it? We've got your perspective and my perspective on either side, and the listeners can enjoy both aspects.
Yes, and I love doing that. So tell us a little bit about what you do now, Jenny, and obviously your podcast, and then we'll go into a bit deeper after that.
So for the last 3 years, I've been working as a life coach primarily, and an NLP practitioner, probably most passionate about the NLP aspect because I love how we can use language in neurolinguistic programming to very quickly change mindset. And then 4 months ago, maybe 5 months ago now, I was sat in Birmingham on a podcasting day, and I had been procrastinating. And within half an hour, I messaged my partner saying, that's it, I'm doing my podcast. It's starting. So that's been going for about 4 months, and it's called The Drama Dialogues. And I absolutely love it. I have had some amazing guests on, and you are now in that list of very amazing people. My friend said to me, Jenny, you know lots of interesting people, don't you? I'm like, yeah, I really do.
Yeah, absolutely that. And I think that's probably testament to our characters as people, because I feel also the same. But then obviously, which was really amazing on your podcast, you told me about the fact that you went to fashion college, and obviously you dabble around in drama and all these nice things. I think that's where obviously you meet these different people in different spaces, don't you? Because if you follow that linear pattern of just doing a 9 to 5, and which I'm not dissing, because I know a lot of people do, and I'm not cutting that out. But if you had no space to meet anyone else other than the same people, that's why you don't meet anyone interested and varied. But obviously that's all down to our individuals, and we attract who we are, don't we? So maybe we're a little bit weird, and that's why we meet weird people.
Definitely. Absolutely, for sure. And I do think that is the thing. We attract what we put out there. So if we're all doom and gloom and we wonder why we're surrounded by people who are doom and gloom, have a look at yourself first.
I always
Don't
say
go blaming everyone around you.
Yeah, absolutely. I always say you're a mirror to your universe. What you are is reflected back to you. And it's exactly that. So please tell us your story, Jenny. How did you get into this career pathway? And anything you want to share, the floor is yours.
No, that is a long story. If we start from my art college, I hated school, absolutely hated it. And I did my degree in fashion, which I also disliked intensely. Spent most of the 4 years thinking I should have moved to theatre costume, but didn't actually move to doing theatre costume. I just sat there thinking about it for 4 years. Got my degree and went into a ship management company where I tried not to stay for 12 years. I spent 12 years going, I'm not staying. And because I was never staying, although I progressed, I didn't progress through levels that I could have done because I never intended on staying. And in that time, I met my ex-husband when I was 19. He was 20. We got married when I was 24, and we had our first daughter at 27. It was all very, very traditional, linear. You know, we had the whole conversation about it. And I said, I want to have my child in July. So we had the conversation. She was born in the middle of July. And, you know, it was all very, very structured and traditional. And I was really invested in being a good wife and a good mum and doing all the things. But I had my daughter and realized quite quickly, but vocalized after 4.5 months, that I had postnatal depression. And it was such a shock because I've been around kids my whole life. My dad was the eldest of 10. So I had 25 cousins, and I had babies around me all the time. I was used to babies. Like, it was none of that. But the hormonal impact was just like being hit by a bus. And so it took quite a long time for me to sort of confess that I wasn't feeling very good. And that really happened when I watched my daughter, who was in her little plaything, and she was just stood there in her plaything where, you know, where they press buttons and stuff. And she was just watching me crying. And I thought, this isn't good, is it? So I really fought to get better. And we've just talked a lot about your toxic masculine traits. And I had those too, but also in the realms of postnatal depression, where I would go to the doctors and sort of demand to get better. And through that demanding, they were very much of the impression that I wasn't a high risk case, or I wasn't that bad. Or so I had to go through all these weird processes of CBT, which I found very, very difficult and didn't help at all. They assigned me a consultant, but it would get cancelled every month because something else more important had come up. I saw a psychiatric nurse who came and told me that I was living as if I was on holiday, and I was in the wrong house, in the wrong neighborhood, and the wrong job. And it was my fault that I couldn't get all the medication options because I insisted on breastfeeding. And, you know, so she didn't last very long either. And this whole process was just so bloody hard. Like, it was so hard. And ultimately, when I had my second daughter, the doctor at the time, because she'd never met me before my postnatal depression, and when I had my second daughter, she went, "Oh, I'm so sorry." She said, "You're a completely different person. I had no idea." But she had nothing to compare me to. And the system is so bad that like, I had private healthcare, couldn't get anything privately. It was just like a complete battle all the time that I was up for. You know, I'm a doer, I'm an action taker. So I was like, right, what are we going to do? Let's do it. So that whole time was not my favorite. Eventually I went on antidepressants, which I was on for a year, came off them too because I wanted another child. Decided this time that July was a terrible month to have a baby. It's too hot in July. So I was going to have a baby in April. So my daughter arrived on the 1st of April as my happy April Fool, 8 days late. Because when they said you're due in March, I was like, oh, that's fine. You know, March is fine. It's close enough. 1st of April. There she was. So you can see now, Sherisse, the manifesting and the kind of control element of my life. It was like, meet your boyfriend at this time, get married, have babies. And then I was like, well, we decided I wasn't working for the company anymore, which is another different story. You can read it in my autobiography, which I'm writing. I'm nearly there on my first draft. I didn't know what I wanted to do at all, like no idea what to do. And so we sort of agreed I would be a stay-at-home mum and progress my husband's career. So that led to us moving from Scotland, where I wasn't from Scotland originally. I was from England. We moved there when I was 12. Moving to Scotland from England at 12 years old and going to high school is not easy. And it's the first day I was asked what football team I supported. I was like, football? I don't like football. And then I realized they were actually asking what religion I was. I don't know, like, I had no idea. It was just a very different culture. They weren't massively embracing of a 12-year-old English girl. It was pretty tough. So that's, the school years were difficult. But anyway, we were there for 26 years. And then we spent 10 years in just outside Lockerbie on the Scottish border. And then my husband got a job in Norfolk. So we moved to Norfolk. This is a whistle-stop tour. Moved to Norfolk. We were there for 6 months. He came home one day and said, I'm going to have to find a new job. I don't like the ethics of the company. He was correct. We then ended up in Derbyshire on the 27th of December in the snow with a 3-year-old, a 7-year-old, and a dog. And I've been here for 10 years, but 6 weeks after we moved there, he then moved again and again and again. So at that point, our relationship ended after we'd been here because there was just too much stuff. In the midst of all of this, I ended up with a thyroid illness. I had overactive thyroid, Graves' disease, because I was just so emotionally unwell and like all over the place. I thought I was being lazy because I couldn't get off the couch. My hands were hurting. My temperature was unregulated. My whole body was screaming at me to stop. And I was like, I can't stop. How can I stop? I've got 2 kids. I've got a husband to support. I've got to this. And I was just going mental. And the doctor called and said, yeah, your thyroid's all wrong. And I was like, what's the thyroid and what's all wrong? So that led to a journey of me having to work out how to heal myself without having my thyroid removed. Some people absolutely have to have it removed. I was fortunate enough that wasn't the case. I've been in remission for 8 years now without medication, which is quite unusual. And me and my husband separated. We'd been married for 11 years, together 16 years. And I sat down in my minimum wage job as a secretary at the cinema because it was 10 till 2, Monday to Friday, and I could take the kids to school and I could pick them up from school, earning next to nothing, but doing essentially what felt like a full-time job. And went, what am I going to do? Like, I need to do something with my life. I was the chair of the PTA. I ring bells at the local church, even though I'm not particularly a church goer. And it was a hobby I had. So I was on the education committee to help people with their ringing. I was a secretary for the ringers. I was a professional volunteer, giving away my energy to every single person that asked. And it got to the point where my best friend banned me from going to any meetings where we knew they would be asking help, because I would literally have to sit on my hands because I couldn't help myself. If somebody wasn't going to do it, and I'd just wait and I'd wait and I'd go, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. And then I go, oh, I'll do it.
No, do you know what is funny? Because obviously I was saying about how everyone kind of saw me as that strong person to help them out through everything. And I think yours is that element of obviously helping, and that's fulfillment. And that's the martyrdom, isn't it? That we talk about quite a lot. That's the martyrdom, that we feel that fulfillment. And it's, it's just crazy, isn't it? That is what we associate with being a good person, a good human being, is giving away all of our resources and energy to everything else, because it's selfish to give it to yourself, isn't it? Like, that's the Western culture's ideal of that. And that's just completely all wrong. And I guess what we're trying to change within that. But yeah, really interesting. Obviously, a couple of the things that you mentioned in there. And I just, you've probably come to this realization as well now that the thyroid obviously is a byproduct of your inner world, isn't it? And I think a lot of people don't understand that connection. I talk a lot about how I have had IBS and working through that. That's obviously from trauma. The thyroid is exactly the same. And I think as women as well, there's always this niggle, isn't there, inside of us, that something isn't quite right, or that doesn't feel good. And I think we get to that point where when we're not aware or self-aware or tapped in, we ignore it. But now, obviously, the more you heal and deepen, you understand that when something doesn't feel quite right, you're like, that's not it, you know. And I'm sure there was moments leading up to the severe issues, I'll say, the like kind of health issues that you had with the thyroid. There must have been some like fatigue or something in your body that you were ignoring at that time.
I ignored everything. I
Mm.
had mild postnatal depression. There's no such thing as mild postnatal depression. Like you're depressed.
Yeah.
I had had aching hand. I was a bit achy. I wasn't a bit achy. I couldn't get off the couch. Like my hands were shaking. But I was like, oh, it's all right. It's just because of stress. It's just because of I was a master of brushing everything off.
Yeah.
And I still do it now. And then I have to remind myself, Jenny, you've been here before. And my partner's very good at that now. Matt will always go, will you go to the doctor?
Yeah. And also, you know, what I was saying in your episode about the rest thing, for me, it's like, you know, rest was almost something I didn't do, or, you know, like that quote that's like, sleep when you're dead. Now I'm like, give me the sleep. When can I sleep more? I will sleep when I can, all the time now. And to be fair, I've always been quite a lie-in person. I always like to lay in, but you know, just having a day where I'm not doing anything else. Like today for me is that day. I'm literally recording with you, and then I said to my stepdad, I was like, let's go for a walk and get coffee. I was like, and then that's us for the day. We've got my nieces coming around in the evening. That's a beautiful day for me. But the old version of me would have been like, right, Jenny, from this time to this time, gym, this time to this time, walk, this time to this time, lunch, this time, do you know what I mean? So now it's like finding the flow. But I think, like, you know, a lot of women entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs in general, you know, but obviously it's normalized more for men. I think, you know, in that patriarchal, but that's another conversation. But I feel like the women that I meet, the strong women, that we almost have an element of that, because that's been our survival mechanism, hasn't it? Like that regiment feeling, that regiment structure kind of stops us from feeling, and that's what causes the emotional burnout.
Yeah. One of my top values, when I had my own coach going through my values with me, and we always have this kind of idea of what our values are, and we kind of go, oh yeah, I like freedom and I like values things. We have this thought of values, but when you do it with a coach and you really drill into your values, it is really powerful. And what came out was like my top value was feeling valued. And I was like, oh, yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Absolutely.
So when this is my driving value, this is the thing that actually drives me. So it's where these driving values are where my subconscious takes over. So my subconscious takes over with feeling valued. So I have to now I know it's feeling valued. I can be very conscious of, how can I feel valued without killing myself in the process?
Absolutely.
How can I feel valued without tolerating shit in the process? How can I feel valued without giving myself away all the time? So it's knowing that is one of my top values, and then being able to consciously go, okay, I'm driving for this feeling valued thing. How can I make this more positive and less toxic for me?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the beauty of self-awareness. And that's like one of my pillars that I talk on a lot, is the self-awareness game. And I think so much power comes from that. And evidently in what you've just explained, you know, like the fact that you now can see that, and it's something that's still, you know, going on in your life, as it always does. You know, I think that if you eradicate something out of your life, ultimately I don't think that's healthy at all, you know, in terms of behavior patterns or thought processes that you've had for a long time. I think it's all part of that nurturing process, isn't it, and easing it out. So I think the fact that you're able to now, you know, alchemize that to make it work in your favor, that's a beautiful thing for sure. But when obviously I met you a couple of it was only a couple of days ago, really, wasn't it?
I know.
And I was speaking about how you are great at, I mean, obviously you've mentioned it as well about how you've manifested, you know, the birth of your children, which is just amazing. I mean, there's probably an element of obviously super control within that, but you know, the fact that you managed to get that there, that is amazing. But they were speaking about how obviously you've come out of your marriage, and then you dated for a while, and you met your incredible partner that you're in now. So speak us a little bit through, obviously, you know, going through that divorce process, but also, like, you know, now finding your partner. And I guess there's some like you're speaking about your values. Yeah, please explore that with us.
So me and my husband, it was a really amicable separation, like super amicable. We just went, do you know what, we're like siblings and this isn't really what we want. We want to explore more in our lives. So we decided to separate. We sat down, had the conversation, no tears or anything. It was just like, okay, so we're going to separate. 6 months later, so for 6 months, we did this process where he took the kids every weekend without telling them anything. He would just take them off every weekend. And then the next weekend, I would deal with them. And then he would deal with them. And then after 6 months, we sat down and had a conversation with them. And I guess they were 6 and 9 at time-ish, that sort of age. And we said, look, this is what's been happening for the last 6 months. And so things aren't going to change massively differently to what they've been. But they will change. He lived with us for about a year after we separated and then moved closer to where his work was, which was a few hours away. So that it was quite a sort of gentle process. We every Christmas for the first 4 years, he came and stayed with us. He came to my 40th birthday. We did all these things together. And then at one point we sort of went, okay, we're going to have to start with divorce proceedings. And that's where things went a little bit wrong. So we're not particularly friendly anymore, which is it's a real sadness. It's a shame, but it's just sometimes there was a real lack of communication, a lack of fear. There was a real fear, I think, from both of us about communicating well almost. Because if we communicated well, we might have to deal with some stuff. And so there were certain things that would come up that we just completely misunderstood each other or miscommunicated. So 8 years down the line, we're still not quite divorced. We're just waiting for the paperwork to come through. So that whole process was quite difficult. But sort of immediately after that, I fell into another relationship quite quickly. And that was a really difficult relationship in that we were good friends. We both shared a hobby, but our values didn't match at all. I didn't have the words for this at the time. I wasn't a coach. I wasn't trained. I didn't really have the words. I just knew that what we wanted and our stages in life were completely different. They didn't match. And we carried on with this for 4 years, knowing this. And it was so difficult. It was just... And then pandemic happened. And we talked a lot about your change in life in pandemic in my podcast. But my change from pandemic was we'd been together for 4 years and we didn't lock down together. And I went, well, my kids do not want to live in his house. His house was more than big enough to accommodate us, but we didn't want to live there. He certainly didn't want to live in my house. So we spent the first kind of few months dating via Zoom and all of that kind of stuff. And it just got more and more difficult. And one day when we could do walking like together and stuff, we went for a walk and I said to him, what exactly do you love about me? His response was, Jenny, why do you always ask such awkward questions? And I was like, okay, that's not a good answer as to why you love somebody. Now at this point I had started my coaching training. In fact, by this point I'd finished my coaching training, and he was finding it very difficult to get to grips with the new me, because I had changed a lot in my training as a coach and as an NLP practitioner in that time. And the day that it completely ended for us was the day that I completed my NLP qualification. I got off the phone from my NLP qualification. I called him to say I'd passed, and he said, well done. I burst into tears and I was like, I was proper snot crying because I was so emotional. And he looked at me and he looked at his watch and he said, the neighbour's got a cup of tea for me. Can I call you back? So bless him. So he wasn't very emotionally aware. So at that point, I thought, no, you can't call me back. Like, this is it. This is us done after lots of done. So anyway, at that point, I thought, you cannot go into this again. Like, you have to sort your shit out, Jenny. So I had therapy. I had coaching. And I joined a relationship course with a psychotherapist in America who specialized in relationships. And we did this month-long course. And I learned about attachment styles, and I learned about love languages, and I learned about positive dating, which I'm so passionate about now and help people with, and good profile writing. And when you're dating, it's not about finding everybody that might suit you and everybody who might be all right. It's about finding that one person. So your profile is there. It's like, instead of, lots of profiles are built as vanity metrics for people to get 500 likes. But then it's like casting your net out, catching 500 fish, and then going, well, they all look the same, so I better date them all, but I don't know which one's right. Or you get your rod and you put your nice little golden fish on it to bait the fish that you want, and you chuck your line out there, and then you get the fish that you want. So that's what I did. And after I had a couple of really nice dates with I also went online going, there are really nice men looking for really nice women. That was my mantra. I never ever received a dick pic. I never received anything inappropriate. I met really nice men just looking for love, and they just weren't right for me. So sometimes I go, look, you're really nice. I would be happy to stay in touch. You're just not right for me. And then I matched with Matt, and I turned up on our first date, socially distanced walk between lockdowns, with 30 questions on an A4 sheet of paper. I literally went, right then, Matt, I've got these questions. And he was like, okay. And everyone else says, oh my God, and he stayed. Like, he didn't run a mile. And he didn't, but B, it's interesting to me that is always the response. What? You wanted to ask your dates deep questions? Everybody's shocked by that. And I was like, well, yeah. Like, if he didn't want to answer deep questions, I've just literally left a relationship where the man said to me, don't ask such an awkward question when I asked why he loved me. And so I didn't want to be in that space. I wanted to be with somebody who was really happy and willing to answer deep questions. So we were only supposed to do about 10 on the day, but actually we did all 30 because Matt really enjoyed the process. Yeah, I answered them back, so it wasn't just one way. It was really fun. It was really lighthearted. But it's things like, I asked him, what's the most impactful thing you've learned from a book or a piece of personal development or a guru? And if somebody at that point sort of turns around and says, well, I don't really read and I don't really do personal development, that wouldn't have been the person for me. And I could have moved on, and that was great. So I can see you smiling, because I know, Sherisse, this is like kind of it's something that we talked about the other day, and you were like, oh my God, I love that.
Yeah, I do. And I love that story just as a whole, and just everything about your journey through this. I think, the fact that you are such a self-aware person, the fact that you're so open to receiving help, I think these are all really beautiful traits that as humans, we need to normalize more. So thank you for sharing all of that, because I think that's so important. And the fact that you were able to, use your course. And I think this is the thing, right? With healing, is that I talk about a lot in my own journey, is the fact that, as I healed, I became a different version of myself. And then I feel like some people preferred me better broken. So then now those people aren't really in my life anymore. And I think it's the same, and especially in a romantic situation. And, you said a few times, with the ex, about there was a few like ends, and it kind of kept trailing on, because we do that thing, don't we, where we're like, yep, oh, but, it just works out, it's convenient or whatever. We make those kind of things. But I think me and my friends have this kind of perception that when a woman is ready to end a relationship, she makes her mind up before, so when men are quite impulsive, as in like, I've just had enough, it's over. Whereas women know like that it's going to be the end, like about a month before, and they're like preempting when it happens. And I feel like that's always been your story within that. But I love the fact that, you're talking about the relationship coaching, and like, that was really what, when you was talking to me about that previously, I was so intrigued by that. I was like, wow, I was like, we all need more of this needs to be so normal. I didn't even know that it was a thing that you could have a coach for dating in particular. But I loved that whole process of, you know, what you went through to get that clarity, and even the intention that you had for going on the dating apps. I'm not going to lie to you, dating apps ain't my thing, you know, like, and from exactly what you said, you know, you put your profile on, you know, there's a million people that are interested, and they just, for me, no one's actually been right in that sense. Now, I've met some really nice people, don't get me wrong, but I think it's been really nice to hear as well that I think I get from you just generally that you're very detail orientated and you're thorough in everything that you do. And I think from the get-go that Matt really was on board. And, you know, I think when you say the 30 questions, the initial reaction is like, what? But the fact that you are answering those questions too, and you're open and it's a free conversation, like, surely, I mean, we see all the time, you know, like on programs about like people having little questions like in their bag or like written on the back of their hand. It's almost an element of that. It's just because you're in this space, it's like, no, these are really meaningful questions that actually should be normalized. And you're so right, because, you know, even what you said about the self-work, that's a massive part of my life. So if the person that I'm dating has no want to do that, which actually has happened quite a few times, you know, and I feel like, again, for you, like probably similar situations, like the light in me shines a shadow on them, you know, like as in like my light blinds their, like creates a shadow in their life, and then they're like, oh gosh, I need to work on that thing. Now, I'm not going to dull my light for anyone else, so you either have to use that light as an ignition to light yourself up, and or it just shines back to me. And I feel like that's but one of my friends, she's really into spirituality, and she talks a lot about the man being the moon, and the man being the sun, and the female being the moon, and the moon gets its light from the sun, so the sun shines its light onto the moon, and then the moon reflects it back. And that's that beautiful synergy of a healthy relationship, is the light's always bouncing between the two. And I think yeah, you've just found a way to like really coin that. I feel like we should be putting you everywhere. You should be coming up on the little app with the Tinder thing, you know, or the Bumble, whatever it is, you know, like it should be you in the background, like, need help? How can
People need to want it though. And
Yeah.
I am an expert in a dating group on Facebook, and it's amazing how many people are really reluctant. And I've upgraded it to 40 questions. So it was 30 questions when I did it, but I've added 10 of my own in, because these are a lot of these questions are from the 60s. They're from psychologists, and they're really value-based questions. But there's also some that I've added in myself. But it's things like, if you think about one of the questions is, how, when you're really stressed and you're really like pressured, how do you practice self-care? And that can be a really hard question for people to answer, but it's also very telling about that person. And so some people won't practice self-care when they're pressured. So or how are you in an argument? Are you somebody that leaves and walks out, or are you a shouter, or, you know, what, those sorts of questions. And then people say to me, oh, but they won't give you the honest answer. And that may be the case, but it's not about necessarily, people won't necessarily give you the whole answer the first time either, because you've got to get to know each other. And if you feel unsafe with the person you're dating, like I felt very safe with Matt, we'd had really good conversation, and I felt safe to share everything that I'd shared with him. But if I hadn't have felt safe, there is also, like, don't share all your deepest, darkest stuff with people who don't feel safe. So there is some security. If your gut is saying, this guy's, you know, or woman, like Matt had some really pretty awful dates. Bless. I didn't have awful dates. He had some pretty awful dates. There was one lady that turned up on a date with him saying that she had no children. And then when through the process of the date, it turned out she had 4 children. She just wasn't allowed to see them.
Oh, wow. That's a massive, like, wow.
Yeah, that's a massive skirt over the truth.
Absolutely.
So there are, the other thing to understand with online dating is there are women doing the same thing as the men are doing to the women. It is really a two-way street. So it's how you show up is what you will receive. And we're back to that same message again. How you show up is what you will receive. So it's been a really fascinating process for me to try it out and experience it and do it. But the other thing with all of this is our triggers, and where we get triggered in relationships and how we then deal with that. So at our age, you know, I'm in my 40s, you have relationships. I've had a divorce. So there are triggers that happen. And it's how you then take those into the next relationships and how you deal with them that are massively important.
Absolutely.
Our first, and it was just a conversation. Matt had gone away to his dad's for Christmas. We met in November. He went away for 2 weeks at Christmas. And it was really obvious that he hadn't told his dad anything about me. He was like hiding in the bathroom to call me and stuff like that. And because my previous relationship, the 4-year one, he hadn't told anyone about me for 2 years, which I take full responsibility for, that I tolerated that. I got triggered. So in the past, old Jenny would have gone, he's not told his dad about me. He's not told his dad about me. I would have got really angry. And then at one point I would have kaboomed and gone, why haven't you done that?
Yeah.
So instead I took a deep breath and I said, look, I just want to tell you, I don't want you to change anything. I just want you to know that I'm feeling quite upset because of my past relationship, and it's got nothing to do with you at all. But because he didn't tell anybody about me for quite a long time, I'm finding this really difficult. And I know you've probably got your reasons. I just need you to know that I'm finding it a bit upsetting. And he just said, look, my dad has had to rescue me from my own bad relationships. I'm really enjoying getting to know you. I don't want him stressing over Christmas because he can't meet you. Like, they lived a long way away. I don't want him feeling stressed and therefore stressing me out. So when it's the right time and it's not Christmas and all of that stuff, I will tell him. And immediately, like, my pressure just sort of went straight down. So the way that you ask these questions is really important too. And the intention that you ask it with. We had a conversation, me and Matt talk about it in depth in my podcast episode, What is Love, that me and Matt talk about our love story and what we think love is. I love that.
Oh, go over to that, listeners.
Yeah, it's Matt was like, oh my God, this is so hard. But we had this quite recently where I said to him, I'm just interested. We were lying in bed and he was cuddling me, and I said, I'm just interested. And it's not a criticism at all. I'm just curious that you never say you love me. Like, he will always respond with, I love you, if I've said it, but he will never say it. And he said to me, I don't see the words. He said, I don't hear the words, like the words are, and he said, I don't know if it's because I'm dyslexic or like, he's a visual person. You know, he's been lovely. A lighting designer for 25 years. He's a brand strategist. He's a designer, he's a visual person. So he explained his representation of love to me, which is visual. And so for him, the words don't come. And I think there's a lot of women out there that'll go, he never says he loves me, or you never say you love me. Why don't you say you love me? And the men may not have the vocabulary like Matt does, because we do a lot of this kind of talking all the time, to explain to their partner, or the women might not either. You know, this isn't a male-female thing, to say, well, that's not how I express love. I don't see the love as words. And just having that conversation was so helpful to me to understand how he represents love, which isn't through the words I love you.
So how is it through then? Is it like through like actions?
It's really hilarious. I just can't remember whether he said it on the podcast. He may not appreciate it, but I'll tell you anyway. For him, he said it's like those cartoons where, you know, what was it? Pepe Le Pew with the little skunk thing.
Yeah.
Where the eyes go out and stalks. And he goes, ah. So for him, it's like the eyes going out and the noise. So he has that sort of visual. He doesn't have words.
Oh, that's cute though. That was a really important part that you just shared then. I think that's going to help so many people, because I think you know, and we speak about obviously love languages. I speak about that quite a lot. I mean, I probably don't speak about it quite a lot on my podcast, but I speak about it a lot when I'm talking about dating with friends and stuff. And I think it's now becoming more popular, and I'm glad it is, because it is that formula, isn't it, that we need to understand people. Because as I said, you know, even with my clients, and like, healing isn't linear and it isn't the same for everyone. It's the same with love. And I think we expect our partner to feel and receive love the same way that we do, and we get let down by our own expectations. So you know, the fact that you are heightening, you know, and making everyone aware that these conversations are so important, they really are, because if you don't ask, you'll never know the answer. And I think then you'll sit in that space. So you know, that, thank you for sharing all that, because I think that's just so important, that we really do take that for granted. I think as well, a lot of it is that people are scared to have that conversation because they're scared of what the answer will be. But as you said previously, if you don't feel safe to ask that question, and I think that that's your answer already, isn't it? You know, like knowing that that's not it.
Absolutely. And somebody actually said to me recently, but what about fun? And I was like, well, how many relationships have you started that's been all about fun and they're not a relationship anymore, which is why you're looking for a relationship now? And this wasn't not fun. It was really fun. It was really playful. But all of those questions and allow you to then have easy fun, because you're not constantly worried about what the answer might be. I used to spend literally days with a question in my head going, I need to ask this question, but I don't really, it's going to kick off. And I would work myself up for days and days and days. And I would be sat in the car, we'd be sat next to each other in the car. And I'd be thinking, ask the question, just ask the question, just ask the question, ask the question, ask the question. And this would go on for days. And then eventually I'd ask the question. And sometimes it would be okay. And sometimes it would be more difficult. But it was the fact that I didn't feel confident enough to ask the question that was the problem.
Absolutely. I can relate to a few times again myself in those situations where I've asked the question, but I've worded it in a different way, or, you know, like there's been like a different way of doing it. And I think for me, what I've learned in my own dating experience is that because I spent so much of my life emotionally avoidant, that's been the men that I've attracted. And you know, just now working through all of that and finding, like I said, the piece I think I spoke about in your podcast about, you know, now my masculine and feminine energy are like holding hands and they're in a nice union, that going into dating is a different space. And even this year I feel like I've had another situation where it went really well, it went really smoothly, it didn't work out, but it was quick, and it was kind of like another thing for me to look at myself, like, what am I doing here that needs to be different? And I think, like you just said then, where am I searching for this like person that's ideal and perfect and like have all the fun with, do all the great things with? But if we don't get through those important questions at the beginning, the fun won't be meaningful. And I think that's really it, isn't it? Because it's empty otherwise. You know, like you've got friends you can go out with, and you've got other people you can go out with to do like fun things that are all crazy at the beginning. Like, I think if you prioritize that too much, then you don't get the nitty-gritty part that's important.
Life is always going to have challenges, always, because that's just what life is. And if you have a partner that is only about fun and easy times and the values don't match, then the hard times will come, and they are hard.
Absolutely.
So it's about kind of gearing yourself up for having a great relationship that can survive the more tough times. So me and Matt had been dating for 6 months, and all of a sudden my household kicked off in major fashion, where a year down the line from that, we realized that my daughter is neurodiverse. And so that the last 2 years, we've been together 3 years now, but the last 2 years have been so difficult dealing with teenagers and ADHD and autism and all that brings with it, that if we didn't have that foundation, there is no way, like, he would have been out the door, my ex would have been out the door anyway. Like, it's been so challenging. But because we had that basis, even after 6 months, and I have quite often, not often, once or twice, I've opened the door and said, do you want to walk out? Because I have that avoidant nature in me too. I'm learning to be secure. Me and Matt are learning to be secure together. But he was very, very anxious attachment style. I would swing from anxious to avoidant. Well, I would always start avoidant, then I'd go anxious, and then I'd go avoidant. And and quite often, so a lot of avoidance will start by love bombing, and they will convince you, this is what happened with my ex, they will convince you that you're meant to be together, you're the best person in the world, and they'll do all the things and take you for dinner and do all the fancy stuff. And then as soon as you invest and go, right, okay, I can be in this relationship, they go, oh,
yeah,
didn't really mean it.
Yeah, been in that a few times, singing that song. Yeah, know that one.
Yeah, and they step back straight away. So learning to be secure when you have been in that kind of avoidant and anxious swing is possible. And I think that's the great thing to know, is it is possible to change your attachment style. But also sometimes, even with all the practice, there have been occasions where I've gone, right, you need to back off now, and you need to give Matt the chance to leave if he needs to leave, because this is so difficult. And then he really has to pull me up.
Yeah, but that's so wonderful. And I think it's that, as you were speaking about, that thing, the word that came into my mind straight away was safety. And I think you're both creating a safe space for each other. And I think it's that support, like I'm almost like, a picture is coming to my head of like a harness, and you're both like harnessed into this together. It's like you're abseiling, you're climbing or whatever it is, and you're in it together. And I think that that is created through those conversations, because otherwise you might fall, right? Because you don't know that person's going to catch you. Whereas, that conversations that you had at the beginning of your relationship and you're consistently having about the hard times are just creating a stronger foundation. So if you did fall, you're in that harness. So, the relationship's always going to catch you.
Great analogy. I like that.
Thank you.
And it's also things, our first date, I said, what do you think about marriage? And he said, I don't want to get married. He'd already been married. He didn't want to get married. Now, at that point, I have to go. So I know a few people of my age group who really want to get married again. So at that point, they can go, no, I want to get married again. That's a really important value. I was like, yeah, I'm not sure I want to get married either. So that's fine. And I have to be 100% okay with that. And the way our relationship is now, he doesn't live with us. He lives in his house. And sometimes, when things are getting really overrun with the girls, he's got his place and his space, and then I can go to his and not bring all of this stuff that's going on around me in my house with me, and I can just go to his and go, oh yeah, I can relax here. And so it works, but it's whatever works for you. That's not going to work for everybody, but it's whatever works for you. And that's how all of this is. It is about what works for you. And one of the things I really want to talk about also today, because I think it's important, is big change. And you've been through big change over the last few years. And I think you've probably, a bit like myself, spent your whole life in change, where because of your career and your dancing and your traveling, there's always changes, and you've got to change different environments, different groups, different people. And I've always been the same with that. But change as humans can be really bloody hard because we like the same generally. Like, we are creatures of habit, and we tend to like the same thing. And over the last 4 years, I've been really sort of fighting to stay in the house, which is the house where the girls have been for the last 8 years, and they don't like change. And I've really been sort of battling to stay here. And recently, I've just realized that I can't stay here. It's not viable for us to stay here. And so then I have to look at the other stuff around me and go, okay, so how can I make this change that we haven't necessarily chosen into a choice? And how can we make that a much better experience? And so last week, I sort of put a very vague post on Facebook saying, I'm thinking about selling my house. Everybody, of course, is saying that the housing market's terrible, blah, blah, blah. And I'd sold it within 24 hours. And unless anything happens in the chain, I think, it's a secure sell. And so I literally was on the couch in the morning at Matt's house saying, I'm going to have to, he said, when are you going to put the house on the market? I said, I really don't know. And I just sat there on the couch and I thought, just write this post. If you get this post out there into the universe will take over. And within 24 hours, the universe had taken over. And since that happened on Wednesday, my whole mindset has changed from 4 years of battling against something, going, right, now I can deal with this. Now I know what I'm dealing with. Now I can move forward. And I know there's so many women, particularly in divorce, and men actually, though, in divorce situations where they're holding back, and they're not proceeding with the divorce, or they're not doing things because they're so afraid of what the change might bring. And I was worried about how the girls might react, and it might not be easy, but because of the structure that I've got in place in life, as in, I know that the best will happen for us, whatever the best is. All of a sudden, I've gone from, I don't want to live in that place, and near to where the school is, don't want to live there. And this week I'm going, yes, we're going to live there. Because if we live there, these are all the positives that comes with that. And it only has to be for this period of time to get us through school, and then I can do something else. I don't have to be stuck with that particular thing. So my mindset again has done another flip of change. And I think that's a really important message, that things might feel really difficult. They might not be what you want. But if you just sort of take that breath and take those little steps and trust that the universe will give you the right thing, it will happen.
Yes, I love that so much. That's so amazing. And congratulations on that as well, because that's a really nice achievement, isn't it? To have just internally as well, to feel that you've done that. There's a few points that you said there, which I just want to pick up on again. You said that change, when you flip change to be a choice, which I absolutely love. And I feel like when you were saying that, I was thinking about times in my life when I've done the same thing, and I thought, actually, I don't need to be a victim here. I can use this to my advantage. And I think, have you heard of Edith Edgar? She's the Auschwitz survivor.
Yes.
And so she's also, she went into being a psychologist, and I was reading her book, and it's really incredible. Like, she's, like I said, an Auschwitz survivor, and her book is called The Choice, and it's about, in every moment when she could have given up, she chose to keep going. And I think that you know, in our lives, it looks different each time, but it could be the fact that, you know, like you said, it meant that you had to give up your family home that you didn't want to at the time. But then when you reframed it and thought, actually, you know what, I can hold the power here in this situation, and you did, and inevitably you're going to get the best outcome for it. And I can understand how hard that is with the kids as well, because neurodivergent, some of the obviously things is that the safety and the structure of the same thing, which I understand, you know, just from my own education in that. So yeah, that's a very difficult thing, and I'm really happy that you were able to reframe that in such a nice way. And then there's also an element there which is shining so brightly for me in your conversation there, is the self-trust. It's like, no, you know what, like, you know, we trust the universe obviously, but the fact that you trust yourself in that decision, I think, is so beautiful, and that needs to be highlighted for a lot of people, because whatever you believe is true. And that's evident from, you know, your whole life, looking back on it, and even in my own life, you know, I see that. And I think that's something that we, again, you know, when I was talking about our intuition as women, you know, like, we doubt that intuition, we doubt that self-trust. And I think that's so important, that you just know that regardless of anything, whatever decision you make, you will get the best out of it if you believe you will. Whereas if you choose to be the victim of that situation, or you choose that everything's unfair, it always will be. And I think that that's just an important thing to share at the end there. But you have had such a wonderful, like, you know, this conversation has been so rich, and I'm so grateful for it. And you know, you've highlighted as well, like, some of the things that you work through yourself still, which is really important, which I love to hear. But what would be kind of, I guess, your top tips maybe for someone coming out of a divorce, going into dating again, or anyone going into the dating sphere, like maybe like 3 top tips that you would give to someone listening?
Definitely read up on attachment styles. The book Attached is really good. It's got like a magnet. I can't remember who wrote it, but I'll send it to you. You can stick it in show notes. That's a great book. Learning about love languages, not being afraid of questions. My 40 dating questions is also available to download. So I'll give you the link for that too.
I'm definitely going to share that.
But not being afraid to communicate, but also I have to put my hands up to some bad communication in the past, because I was expecting the person to be different to who they were. And I think when you expect the people to be different to who they are, you're always going to be disappointed. And one of my favorite phrases is, well, as human beings, we are really rubbish mind readers. We're terrible.
Yeah.
Yet we expect it of our partners all the time. They should know me well enough. They should know what I want. They should know I'm thinking that. And then if they don't do that, we get affronted.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. We literally are terrible mind readers as human beings. Unless you're Darren Brown, don't even bother trying. We can't do it. So if we're terrible mind readers, we also cannot expect that of our partners. So if you're expecting your partner to read your mind and do what you want to do, you are being incredibly unfair. And I think you have to take responsibility for that. It doesn't matter how many times you've told them a particular thing. If they're asking the question, it's because they want to know the answer, or maybe they haven't had it. Maybe they are ADHD. But I've learned all about my own, since my girls, I'm like, oh my God, I'm ADHD. And so again, having that awareness, I have then been able to put things in place to manage myself. Me and Matt work together, and we're going to be doing a lot of work together from next year. And we'll sit next to each other working away, and he'll go, Jenny, concentrate. And I'll go, oh, shit, yeah. And they'll go, oh, Jenny, concentrate. Oh, yeah. So I could get cross at that, but I don't, because it's for my benefit. And so I'd say, stop beating your person that you want to love up because they're not guessing correctly.
Yeah, that's so important. So important. I think as well, like, a lot of what you were saying, like, even in the conversations you and Matt have, reminds me of like Hal Hendricks. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he's also a relationship coach. So years and years ago, like, his stuff is the Imago theory. So it's the fact that we meet the match based on our own childhood experiences.
Yeah.
But a way to obviously manage that is to have these really difficult conversations, but that make each person feel seen and heard. So it's almost like one person gets to talk, the other person repeats what the other person said back to them, then says, okay, here's what I would do. And then the other person repeats that back. So it's almost creating this dynamic of a back and forth to create understanding. But obviously it doesn't need to be that thorough. I think the way that you're able to facilitate that space is, you know, beautiful. It sounds so easy the way you're doing it, almost to an extent. And I know it's never easy, but, you know, I think
sometimes it'll take me a couple of days. I'll be sat there going, Jenny, you're a communication coach. Like, communicate.
Yeah.
So sometimes it does still take me a few days to get my head to the point of going, Matt, can we just have a chat? Because and it's never ever what I thought. It's, you know, quite often it's something completely different, or so yeah, I think just having the confidence to not think that this is all dull and boring relationship stuff.
It's necessary.
That's what people see, isn't it?
Yeah. I think personally, everything you're saying for me is like, wow, I've been doing it all wrong for my whole life. That's why I'm single. That's it. You've hit the nail on the head. So I think
I was 43 when I got this.
Well, there you go.
Knock on the head.
That's it. That's why I'm like, I was clearly meant for this right now, Jenny. So if I'm married next year, it'll be because of you. And I'll be saying that. I'll be like, if I didn't meet Jenny, I would never have had this. And I believe that.
Fascinator.
Yeah, I believe it. I believe that the universe has answered my prayers in you, Jenny. So thank you for being here with me today. And I hope that my listeners obviously can take something from that, whether it's obviously you're looking for love or you're looking to deepen your relationships, in all relationships, because communication is important in everything. And I'm such an advocate of that. And I'm definitely up for having a hard conversation.
All of these tools work for parents. It works for kids. It works for siblings. You know, so I will have. It's not just about romantic relationships. Yes. I will go to my parents and put boundaries in that I never used to put in. And my dad is like, he likes to see the tiger around the corner. And so when you get that back at you all the time, sometimes that can be really hard. And I just say, look, Dad, I can't, it's hard enough. I can't have that. So please don't do that with me. And I understand why you're doing it. And I understand that you're trying to keep me safe, but it's making it really hard. And I have such an amazing dad that he's taken that on board. Even, you know, he's in his 70s having to deal with me changing and me putting these things in. And sometimes he doesn't always understand it, but he absolutely respects and stands back and goes, okay, So this isn't just
Yeah.
about your romantic partner, it's your family too.
Absolutely. And I think it's so important you highlight that, because I think we're scared to change because of what might happen to the other people around us. But inevitably, the right people will always evolve with you, won't they? And that's so important to say. But where can we find you to work with you, Jenny? What do you offer? All the things.
Well, I've got an awesome website built by my lovely Matt, Jenny at Jenny Jarvis. No, that's my email address, jennyjarvis.co.uk. And I will send you the link to my 40 dating questions.
Yes.
I've got a mini series of 30 coaching videos, which I've had brilliant feedback from. Basically, get one video in your inbox every day. They're a couple of minutes long, and it's all the tools that I have used in the last 2 years to stay sane when the world has really been kicking off around me.
Yes.
You know, when you've got teenage kids that are not happy, it's challenging. And so it's all my sane tool tips. So yeah, I love working one-to-one. That's where my heart lies. I love working one-to-one. But I do lots of other things. So just go on my website, have a look.
Yeah, definitely. And to finish off, I always do like a soul to soul message. So I feel like, you know, whether it's based on this conversation, whether it's something that you feel like you need to say right now, maybe to your younger self, like what would be your soul to soul message to end the episode?
My message to my younger self would definitely be to find help earlier, to go and look up personal development stuff. I would probably tell myself to listen to Mel Robbins, because I think she's amazing. And then I would tell myself to go and find the drama dialogues, but that wouldn't be possible because I hadn't started it yet. And I think it's just, I was so afraid when I was young to change things. It's why I did a degree for 4 years that I really hated. I was so afraid of change. I was so afraid of anything different. And learning how to embrace change, I think, is it's inevitable. Whether you've chosen the change or you haven't, it's inevitable. So I would definitely tell my younger self to work out how to embrace change. And yes, that's the sort of things I tell my daughters now, and they roll their eyes at me and they go, "Oh, Mum, stop coaching me." But I really hope that they listen to me. I also say, I was telling someone today, I also say to my daughters all the time, if they go into any sort of counselling type remit, I say, talk about me as much as you like. If you want to slag me off, say anything you like about me, please go in and offload and tell them, because I think that's so important that as a mum, I try my best, but I don't always get it right. So I think allowing other people, including partners, to go away and talk and get the stuff about you off the chest. Don't take it personally.
Yes, I completely agree with that. I've always said that. Unless someone comes and tells me to my face, it's not my problem. Like literally what you say about me behind my back, it's not my problem at all. Not one bit of me cares. So I think that that's such a great way to have it. But maybe it's a resilience in us. So we're just like, I don't care. But oh, Jenny, it's been such a pleasure to have you. And I've learned a lot. So, you know, I'm going to be keeping those 40 questions and I'm going to keep them with me on a date. So if anyone sees me out with a bit of paper, you know what's happening. Okay. But thank you so much, Jenny. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you.
Thank you for having me. It's been really lovely.